Hello, everybody. We are live from Los Angeles. Welcome to Mondays with Wallace. I'm Wallace. This is Mondays with Wallace. We talk about anything, everything cannabis. We talk about cannabis this, cannabis that. We are, I see. Are we there? I have the mic now. Okay. You can reach us on Mondays with Wallace on gmail.com. We are on Twitter. We are on Facebook and Instagram. Today we're going to talk about a really interesting thing that happened years ago. And obviously we're talking about marijuana, but we're talking about marijuana today in the 60s. And we're going to talk about marijuana today in the 2018s. I have with me Brandon Tidwell. Brandon Tidwell of
Sweet Daddy Edibles.
Sweet Daddy Edibles. And I have with me
Steve Cotton from SC Edibles, Southern California
Cotton
Edibles.
Exactly. So the Rams won. I see you've got your Inglewood.
We are repping the Rams.
Yes,
we are riding the Rams way.
I came with my shirt. I came with
You
my
got
hat.
your shirt. Did you gentlemen watch the game?
Yeah, it was good.
Did you watch the game?
Really good game.
Both games went in overtime yesterday.
What did you think about the play?
Oh man, the play. It goes. It depends on who you are.
Yeah.
It really could have went both ways.
And if you know what I'm talking about, if you saw the play, it was the pass interference play that was not called.
Oh, that's PI all day, man.
That was pass interference all day long. But if you looked at it well enough, I thought
no call?
the receiver did lean into the defender a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I felt it should have been a call. But did you feel it should have been pass interference?
That's PI, man. He's not playing the ball.
He's not
playing the ball. He's face guarding the whole time, and then he took a shot at the receiver. That's pass interference.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
But I'll take it. I'll take the no call.
I'll take the no call too. That would have been the game for sure. Had they have called that, that would have been the game for sure. So today we're talking about, again, marijuana. And one thing that when you think about the 60s is thought to be the age of innocence. That was the initial age of innocence. And in the 60s, there was the Charles Manson murders. We have on the line with us today, Manuel. Manuel, are you on the line with us?
Yes.
Good deal. Well, it's good to hear you. Do you remember the Manson murders?
Yes, I do. I kind of followed that. I found it very interesting. I really did. I found that very. I was kind of like really interested in following that.
Well, the Charles Manson, just to give you a little background on the story, Charles Manson, he wanted to be an artist. And Manuel, you're an artist, right?
Yes.
So he wanted to be an artist, and in fact, Charles Manson, he was born in Ohio. He was a petty crook, petty con, and he moved to Los Angeles, and he was really influenced by music.
Yeah.
He was a big Beatles fan.
Yeah, he was.
And this was in the autumn of 1969.
Mm-hmm.
What he did, he had a group of followers, and his group of followers, what he did with them is his whole ideology, and this was based on a delusional ideology. And the only reason I'm bringing him up based on marijuana is because they were big marijuana smokers. Charles Manson was. What he would do, though, he would constantly feed his group of people. He had followers. They got a place out in either the Valley, was it? I believe it was the Valley. They had a place. It was the farm. And
yeah. They had a big old large farm out there.
Exactly. They had a big large farm. And Charles Manson, he got with one of the Beach Boys, Dennis Wilson, and tried to make an album. And he was somewhat successful, but largely he failed to making this album. So what he did, his idea, was that he would create a race riot. And to create a race riot, and this is true, this is... and Charles Manson just died recently.
Yeah, I know. I know. I don't know exactly when, but I do believe it was last year.
Yeah, he just died very recently. And the thing that he would do is he would constantly feed his followers. He'd constantly feed them marijuana, which was typically spiked with LSD,
Right.
and was typically spiked with Manuel. What's the product that makes people take their clothes off?
PCP.
PCP.
Yeah.
There you go, phencyclamin. And he would typically spike his followers with PCP. And what they did, they went to Sharon Tate. You know Sharon Tate?
Mm-hmm.
She was a famous producer. Or actually, I think she was an actress. And Roman Polanski was he was a big producer, and he still is. He had produced Rosemary's Baby. Are you familiar with Rosemary's Baby?
Yeah.
I've heard of it.
Rosemary's Baby is a story about a woman who was having the baby of the devil. She had gotten pregnant from the devil, and it created this whole this mystere that there was a subculture, and people had made an association with Roman Polanski and this culture of demonic culture, and all of Los Angeles in the late 69, 1970s, they were just terrified. Just terrified, because you were wondering when they were going to come to you. Everyone was just terrified. One thing that the Beatles song was Helter Skelter. Remember Helter Skelter?
Yeah.
Manuel?
Yes.
So that was their thing. So, and that goes back to today. Now we'll fast forward to today. Marijuana today, I think I wouldn't say it's good, because I'm not a marijuana fan, but it's clean.
It's more tested.
It's more tested.
It's more regulated, tested, more laws, more things like that in place.
Manuel, do you still smoke, or have you ever smoked, or do you smoke?
I used to in my teenage years. But I got out of it for the simple fact that it just made me unproductive.
Unproductive, okay.
Yeah.
How are you doing nowadays? Are you doing good nowadays?
Yeah, I'm okay. I just have a couple of beers or something of the sort, but I don't actually smoke anymore.
You don't smoke anymore?
No.
I agree, E-Man. That weed makes you unproductive, man. I'm trying to quit right now, man. Every week I say I'm quitting and I'm right back on it.
Well, these guys say that.
I'm telling you, man, I would get so much more done if I could put that weed down.
Yeah.
I really have to admire Stephen and Brandon, just in that you smoke, or you seem to smoke, and you seem to be really productive, which is really I'm really thankful for. Back in the day, when marijuana was the marijuana that we would roll, and we would get the little leaves and crush it. It was easy to spike it. Can you spike marijuana today? Because what I had seen, Brandon, I think you had last week, you had something that was a pure form, because we use the little vape pens.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have some with me today.
Oh, do you have a vape pen?
Mm-hmm.
Can I see one of your vape
sure.
pens? So you have the vape pens, and the vape pens, can you spike the vape pens?
Well, I mean, you have to think about it. You can potentially spike anything.
I see.
You know what I mean? If you can add it in there without somebody knowing it, you've spiked it.
Mm.
But
for instance, the oil, you may be able to put something like, you may be able to put drops of Visine in the oil to make someone get some type of effect like that. You may be able
is that what you can do?
Because Visine used to be a date rape drug.
Yeah, it still is.
Oh, I didn't know that.
People take drops of Visine and put them in people's drinks and take advantage of ladies. That's what people do with Visine.
Drops of Visine?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I've actually
It's a
heard
date
of
rape drug.
Prostitutes in Las Vegas. They'll do that. They'll find people who are potential tricks. They'll put some Visine in their drink or something. The people will pass out. They'll rob them and leave.
Visine.
Visine, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. I'll have to
We
look
all
at that.
know that one, man. Stay away.
I
There's
didn't
a
know
vape pen. You
nothing
can take a
about
look
that.
at it, but
Yeah, I've never heard anything like that. That's quite remarkable.
Someone could spike that oil in there.
Visine, I've always thought Visine was just phenylephrine, or I have to Google what Visine is. But I always thought it was just a decongestant for the eyes, and
Me too.
that's what it's
They say
supposed
that
to be.
they say it's a date rape drug.
it's a date rape drug. Visine.
Crazy.
Absolutely. If you guys Google it, I'm sure you'll see several articles.
Oh, it's amazing. So if I were, what would be the effect of me putting a drop? You say a drop, DROP. a drop of Visine in your pen. I see we have a vape pen. What type of pen is this? This is an interesting pen.
It's considered a disposable pen.
This is disposable?
Because it has a battery on there, but the battery you don't have to charge.
You don't have to charge
So the
it?
battery only activates when you inhale.
So how long would something like this last? And I see the yellow. I don't know if people can see what I have in my hand, but there's a yellow liquid in here, and this is cannabis, I suspect.
Yeah, it's a cannabis oil. It's a very concentrated distilled cannabis oil.
Without disgusting you, I won't put it up to my nose because it doesn't smell.
Oh no, you won't smell anything. It's
I
odorless.
thought cannabis
it's flavorless.
smelled.
Typically it does, but that's when you're dealing with the plant, right?
I see.
The plant has all the flavor and the smell to it.
Brandon, would this get you as high? Like if I were to drink this or not drink this, you have to smoke this, right?
Yeah.
And you smoke it the same way?
You vaporize it.
Does it heat or something?
Yeah. So that's what happens. So you inhale, the battery activates, and when the battery activates, it begins to heat the oil. There's a little chamber in there that you can see, and it begins to heat the oil. And then this oil goes through the holes, through these filter holes, and they come up and they vaporize through the mouthpiece. So you just inhale the vapor that comes out. And it's really becoming a preferred method these days because you can be on an airplane. You can be in a restaurant. And it really is very inconspicuous, and it's very potent, too.
When you blow it out, does it have a smell?
No, not at all. Not at all. You know what? I always tell people, you could blow it in your mother's face. You could blow the smoke in her face, and she wouldn't know what it was.
Would she get high?
No, not at all.
She would not get high?
Not at all.
Well, that's a little tricky. Vape pens aren't supposed to have a smell at all, but I've hit a couple vape pens. I've tried it literally in my mom's house, and my mom came in the house and said, I know you're not smoking in the house. And I thought it was just a vape pen and it wasn't going to leave any odor, but some pens do leave a smell. They're supposed to be odorless. They're supposed to be able to smoke them in the casinos, the movie theaters, the airports, things like that. But some of the vape pens do have an odor, man. My mom came in the house. She thought I was blazing in there.
Oh, is that right?
I would say there's probably a lot of lower-end oils that are out there that probably are not refined. With what I use personally, it's a very fine distilled oil, so you don't get any of that. That's really the intention of it, is to take the smell and the odor out of it so that it can be put into other things like food products and drinks and things like that.
I see. If you had, the thing with music, and back to our cannabis and our Manson murders, music is such a big thing, and people are persuaded by it, which is what happened with the murders, the tape LaBianca Charles Manson murders. But Manuel, let me ask you, music, were you affected by the whole drug era? Because when in the 60s, I believe you were pretty young, but you were also a musician then, and you're a musician today. Do you still play today?
Yes.
When you find concerts, are people smoking at concerts?
Yes. Yes, because we're in a situation now, like weed is not like it used to be in the 60s. For me, what I know for pretty much of a fact is like back in the day, weed was grown more on a pure level, but I'm not sure if I'm right or not, but I know that it seems like that there are different ways of growing it now, and I think a lot of chemicals have something to do with it, because it's not like it used to be, where you used to get a real nice happy high, and it wouldn't be all that coughing and stuff.
Okay, so where did you get marijuana back in the day? Where did you get marijuana? You usually bought it from a source, whereas Brandon, do you buy marijuana from a source? And Manuel, I'm going to say you're marijuana from the 60s, and Brandon, Stephen, I'm going to say you all are marijuana from the 2018s. So where would you get marijuana back in let's say the 70s and 60s?
Well, I know that we used to grow a lot of it.
Oh, you used to actually grow it?
See, yeah, because we would get like, lids, like $10 lids in wax bags that were like 3 fingers, and then we would take the seeds out. And now we really don't even have seeds, but back then in the 60s and 70s, we would take those seeds and we would grow our own plants, in our backyard. And I mean, they used to grow huge, and that was like real potent, clean weed. But now it's like you can't even get any weed with seeds in it anymore.
Yeah, but the stuff that, like if you saw the pen, the vape pen that Brandon has, so what's the potency of this particular marijuana? So this cannabis?
That oil is called distillate oil.
It's called distillate oil?
And it ranges from 90 to about 99% THC.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just a comparison.
Potent these days.
Yeah, all very potent. But I would say just a comparison, like the flower or the, raw cannabis is somewhere between 15 and maybe 30% THC.
Hey, Brandon, let me ask you a question. Why is it that you can't get weed with seeds anymore?
I think really just because we found a way to kind of like genetically engineer it out of the plant. So they've used crossbreeding with different strains over the years to get rid of undesirable effects.
They don't want the male plant anymore. They only want the female plants. The male plants are the ones that produce the seeds.
Oh.
We don't want to have to pick out those seeds like you guys did back in the day. So we use the genetics, the technology, and you're right, a lot of chemicals too.
Yeah, that's what I know. Yeah,
but I've had weed without the chemicals. I've had organic weed, and I don't want to smoke organic weed. Everybody says I want the healthy weed. I want the organic weed. I don't want that mess. I want the stuff that gets me high. Well, and that's usually the stuff with the good chemicals that was grown hydroponically.
And
I don't like organic weed.
Back to the '60s weed, I would. My feeling is '60s weed had some undesirable effects. But if you were to say something's undesirable effect, what would that be, Brandon?
Maybe you don't want the weed to make you sleepy.
Oh, is that right?
I knew you was going to say that. Yeah.
Maybe you want it to give you a creative high, so you can go do music or go write poetry. Maybe you do want it to give you an appetite, or you don't want it to give you an appetite. Mm-hmm. Because today the big thing is a lot of cancer patients who have to go through chemotherapy are using it, and it's used to help them stimulate their appetite.
That's true. That's one of the legitimate uses of cannabis that I've seen, and I think there's some really benefit to that.
Yeah, for sure.
But hallucinating, I've always thought that to be the problem with cannabis. And when I look at cannabis, when I see cannabis, and when I go back to the things that was predominant with like the Manson time, the Age of Innocence, I think hallucinogens were the desired effect. And you would, when you went to a place like Woodstock, everyone was hallucinating and having these. It was like a magical place to be, and I think now we don't like that anymore. Do you feel like the marijuana back then was marijuana, or do you think it was just spiked with something?
No, I don't think it was spiked. I just think it was like really good marijuana, clean marijuana. That was a lot of it. Like I said back then, it was grown. People used to grow their own weed. But I do think that LSD had a large effect of hallucinogenic, because LSD was in popular demand in the 60s, and everybody was like, really into LSD because what it did, it like made the music more vivid as far as in the hearing part of hearing the music, made it more vivid in the ear. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what really terrifies me about smoking marijuana, and one reason I haven't smoked marijuana, although there's an argument with me that I've had it before because I've been in cars where when I was a kid in high school and they were smoking, and you get a high contact high, and I get all that, but I'm just terrified the way it would make me feel today. Mm-hmm. And just the prospect of me hallucinating, oh my God, I just can't imagine it.
Think about the amazing appetite you're going to have after you smoke that joint, man. I mean, that appetite is something else, man.
Doritos and brownies.
Oh, my God. You just want to eat everything.
What are the, and if you don't know the answer, it's okay, but what are the risks of me hallucinating? What are,
Well, you shouldn't be operating any heavy motor vehicles. You shouldn't be driving like that. If you're just hallucinating.
Hallucinating is, when I see hallucinations, and when I used to work, I still work at the VA, but when I started in Cleveland, we would have vets that would come from Vietnam, and they would hallucinate relative to seeing things on the wall. And when I hear hallucinations, that's what I see. I see things coming from the floor and things coming to get you. And
Yeah, weed doesn't
That's
do that.
not
You're
marijuana.
right.
So
That's some acid. That's something else.
LSD does that.
Angel dust, all that stuff.
Yeah, especially LSD.
We hear about people lacing marijuana with angel dust and things like that.
Oh yeah, so it's called. They used to call it. It was called like lovely. In other words, what it was like the oil that they make PCP with. The water, call it water, and they would put it on
water
on the weed. Yeah, that's like
I think it's an embalming fluid.
Yeah. But they
do they still do that?
They would mix that. They would mix the chemical, which was a fluid. You know, it was like a brownish color, brownish gold color, and they dip the cigarettes in that these days. And you can get it now. They give you these little bottles for $10 now, and you can get like 2 cigarettes out of it. You dip it in a cigarette.
Now that's Sherm, right?
Yeah.
Or is that Sherm?
PCP is Sherm. And it's angel dust was the first way they used to put it on mint leaves. You know, and
it's gonna have you hallucinate.
So I think there's a real argument that people in the 60s, that's what they were doing, because if you went to and if you look at some of the video recordings, everyone was taking their clothes off, and I think that was, you know, and to this day, when you see people, when you look at like news or television, you see people at bus stops and what have you taking their clothes off, and typically, you know, that's a sign, I think, of Sherm, I believe.
It's kind of a whack attack. You know, it's like when you start doing that, then that means that, you know, you had too much, and it's something about it. And I don't really know exactly why that happens, but I've been around a lot of guys that I used to do it, and they would start taking their clothes off. You know, and I don't understand why that drug makes. It didn't make the women do it. It made the men do it.
Yeah. Do you think? Let me ask you. Do you think the Manson? And if you don't know, you probably don't. Do you think the Manson followers, they were drug induced, or do you think? And if you talk to the Manson followers, everyone wanted to be a part of something, and they were a part of. I think they called it a farm, or they called it it was a community, and they always remarked how well Manson treated them. It was really the thing of the 60s, the late 60s. Do you think, and for sure they were doing marijuana, do you feel it was Spike, Manuel, or do you feel it was just the music?
No, it wasn't Spike, but Manson had a time period for everything that he wanted his followers to do. And everybody would have to take acid together, you know. It's just like sitting at the table like dinner time.
Exactly, that's what
everybody
they did.
would have to take a tab together, so everybody would be on the same groove.
Music really, really, really does a lot for me, and I know it does a lot for you, Manuel. That's how they brought all this together, because with Helter Skelter, they interpreted to be, which is the Beatles thing, to be apocalyptic. And just to finish the story, this is straight hallucination. At least I think it's hallucinations. But Manson's plan was that by killing the Tate LaBianca people, his plan was that it would create people would think the blacks did it, and they would. What would happen is there'd be this huge race riot, and the black people would kill all the white people. That was their plan. That was his plan. And his plan was the black people would kill all the white people. And then when the black people realized, oh my God, we killed all the white people, then their plan was that the black people would realize, and this is what he actually thought, the black people would realize, my God, now that all the white people are dead, we don't really know how to run this. And then what Manson and the guys would do is they would come out of the ground, they would come from underground, and they would say, hey, oh my God, there's Charles Manson, there's a couple white people. Would you please lead us? And then when after all the white people were killed, the Manson and his followers, they would be the leaders of the entire world. That was Helter Skelter.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that remarkable? I mean,
so were they killing people out there on this farm?
Well, they weren't killing people at the farm. What had happened was that Manson, he had went to a place because he really wanted to get an album made. That was his thing, to get an album made. and he only went to a house to get this album made with a producer, and he went back to the house, and the producer wasn't there anymore. And so instead of the producer being there, it was a gentleman who owned a food store. I think his name was La Bianca. And so he went into La Bianca, into that particular house. It was a beautiful house. He randomly picked a house, and he went in, and he says, well, we need to kill somebody. You know, we need to kill someone famous, someone rich, and someone white. And so they went in, and this La Bianca lady was there, and he killed them all. Put everyone in there.
Yeah, Sharon Tate was in there.
I believe, Lee, and you're probably going to know better than me, although I'm not sure how.
Yeah, she was there. She was there. But it was like he wasn't out for her. He was just trying to, I think, make some kind of in his mind, a political statement. Like,
exactly.
They were like the Beach Boys were running away from him. They was like, I don't know how to tell this crazy cat, that
you're exactly right.
He can't pull it off. He doesn't have the talent.
Exactly, and that was the thing. He didn't have the talent, but he actually produced an album. I don't know if you've ever heard it. I heard a little bit of it, but it's absolutely terrible. But so he went in and he killed this young lady. It was Rosemary LaBianca and her husband, and the next night they went and they killed, I believe, the Tates. I think it was the next night.
What are they doing? Shooting people, hanging people?
No,
what
actually
are they doing?
Choked them with a cord, electrical cord, and they stabbed her like 41 times.
Yeah, there was a lot of cords and a lot of knives. It wasn't very much gun going on, guns going off or anything. Like they used like knives and cords and stuff.
Exactly.
That's horrible.
Well, the thing they would do is there was a particular song. It was a Beatles song. It was from it was a Summer of Love album, I believe. This was kind of a hippie cult, and they would play this music over and over and over and over and over again, and that's how they got their motivation to do these killings. And Helter Skelter. Do you know the Beatles? Was it the Light album? Do you know, Manuel, or do you know, Lee?
No.
Is it White album? White. It was a white cover album. Okay, good deal. So Lee, very knowledgeable about that. But they would play this White album over and over and over again.
I remember that in the movie. Yeah. I mean, it would just be like popping with scratches.
They did a movie for Charles Manson?
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, man, they made this guy famous.
I got it right here.
Is that right?
I got it, yeah.
Yeah, that was absolutely a remarkable time. And actually, they were, back to the Manson murders, there were actually, there were more than 4 followers. There were a number of followers, and there were 4 who were convicted. Charles Watson, Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Van Houten, and they were actually, when they actually went to jail, really people had no idea who had did this. They had no idea. And there was just total paranoia. In fact, Warren Beatty, I think he had lived in that particular area, and it was, to him, he had described it as like a small nuclear device going off. It was just such a random time. And what had happened, I guess there was a young lady named Virginia, just FYI, you guys, there was a young lady called Virginia Graham who had dated Frank Sinatra. She was in jail. She was like I don't want to say a petty prostitute, but she was kind of like she was in jail for prostitution. And while she was in jail for prostitution, there was another young lady, and this is down in L.A. County. Have you ever been to L.A. County, by the way? Any of you guys ever been in L.A. County? Yeah. I have not. You've been in L.A. County? Mm-hmm. I hear that's a remarkable place, L.A. County, by the way. I've had family down there, and they describe it as being a remarkable place. I won't.
That's a word for it.
Yeah, I've had actually family. I hate to get off the subject here, but I've actually had family that have been in trouble, in and out of trouble, and they've come to visit me, and they've gone into L.A. County.
Are you talking about the county jail?
County jail, men's central jail. I hear that corrects a lot of ills. I hear if you do time at men's central jail, you're good. You're good. But anyway, so back to so what had happened was that this young lady, she had Virginia Graham. She had met this beautiful white lady. Her name was Susan Atkins. And Susan Atkins, while in L.A. County jail, she'd be dancing around. She was always in a great mood, and she was always she was just exercising just all over the place, and I guess she had taken friends with this young lady, Virginia Graham, and she had says, "Wow, you're in such a good mood," and she said, "Well, why are you in jail?" And she had described to Miss Graham that she's in jail because they think that a year ago, she had potentially was involved in a murder, killing someone, and she had told her, says, "You wouldn't believe it, but we actually killed the LaBiancas," and she confessed then. So it was basically a jailhouse confession, and then that's how they had described, and they had described a lot of people that they were going to kill more people, but it was that aloofness, and it's is largely thought it was drug related. A lot of this crime, and I don't know if you would say the Tate LaBianca murders was drug related, but I think there's a real argument to that. And I guess our question today is, do you think you could possibly do this to this day? Do you think that's possible to get a whole? To me,
I think yes, you can get a following like that. I think they weren't just smoking weed. I think he was putting something in the weed to get all these people to start following him, to start doing whatever he says, to buy into him. I think it's possible for someone to do something like that today.
Well, the thing about it is like LSD was at an all-time high back then, and people were really, really, really dropping acid all the time. I mean, there was quite a bit of acid going around, especially in concerts and things of the sort, especially like at Woodstock. I mean, I think 2/3 of everybody at Woodstock was high on LSD.
LSD, yeah. Now, Lee, my producer, Lee Michaels, and we do want to thank Lee Michaels and Josefa Salinas here at the Power of Voices studio in Culver City. Lee, I understand you went to Woodstock. Would you say that people were on LSD?
The majority of the people were.
On LSD or marijuana?
Well, both. Both. Everybody was doing at least some weed.
Yeah.
There was alcohol. There was speed, acid, LSD.
A lot of wine, too.
Was going on, but not everybody was participating in the heavy.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. We have the thing every year. It's in April out here in Los Angeles. What is it? Coachella. Do people at Coachella, is there people smoking at Coachella? There's got to be. Everyone's smoking weed at Coachella.
Everyone's smoking weed at Coachella.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
And they do all those other drugs out here, too.
Have you gentlemen been to Coachella? Have you been to Coachella?
I have.
You have been to Coachella?
Went 2 years ago.
Yeah. The thing at Coachella, which is really remarkable to me, is that when you go, very typically, a lot of people get sick. A lot of people at Coachella will develop some respiratory thing.
There's people vomiting up all over, left and right. It's nasty out there.
Is it the heat? Is that what it was?
And the dust.
And the hydration?
It's major dust out there. It's on the polo grounds. So everyone's breathing in that dust all day. And, I mean, there's people vomiting everywhere.
Yeah. Woodstock, Lee, was in New York, I believe. Woodstock, New York. Oh, I see. It's a farm, exactly.
It was on a farm.
And it was, what time of year was it? It had to be in warm.
Yeah, it was
summer. Spring or summer?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was 19.
Oh, what a great age.
Yeah.
What a fantastic.
It really was.
Amazing.
Yeah, I remember when I was 19. Oh, what a great place to be.
Good times, huh?
Yeah, on our last show, we had Tylen Crowley, the young gentleman who was, I think Tylen's 19 or 20. He just turned 21. Wow, what a great age to be.
Is he smoking kush?
I think he did, but he said no. But and I have to respect people that say they don't smoke. You want to respect them and say you claim he didn't smoke. So but it's all good. It's all good. But so today it'd be a little harder to. Do you see people hallucinating? When I actually work in a hospital, and we do see people that come in and they do hallucinate, which is very common. Very typically, it's not marijuana unless it's children that hallucinate.
I've been in a club. I see young ladies in there hallucinating.
And do you think it's marijuana? I guess my question is...
You can tell it's not marijuana.
It's not
marijuana. I can hold a conversation with a girl that's high off of marijuana, but when you're talking to a young lady and she's reaching for things in the air that aren't even there...
That's what concerns me. That is the real deal.
You know that this girl... You don't want to take this girl home tonight. You're going to have some problems, man.
It's an epidemic of that crystal meth now, and hallucinations...
Just reaching for stuff.
Big time with that crystal meth.
Yeah, that's a real problem, and...
it's an epidemic now.
It's an epidemic now. You know what else is an epidemic? And you know we're going to talk about next week. On next week's show, for anyone that I hope you all listen, we're going to talk about actually drugs, pain pills, and how that's really, pain pills have really helped marijuana a lot. And the reason marijuana's helped pain pills is because you actually can't get marijuana. If you were to break an arm or a leg and you went to, say, the doctor to get, let's say you were in an auto accident and you went to the doctor. In the past, they would have given you 30, 40, or 50 Norco or Vicodin. Now, because of some of the scrutiny placed on narcotics, they don't do that.
Yeah, they think you're going to sell those pills.
They think you're going to sell them. And that's what I understand is really happening. We're going to talk about this next show. But it's really difficult to get if you need them. And I really feel like if you have a broken arm, a foot, or a broken leg, I think Norco or Vicodin, Percocet is the way to go. But if your physicians aren't prescribing it, and actually, it really goes along economic lines. Whereas if an individual who looked, if you're not as clean, you don't look as clean, and
you go into the doctor's office and you look a little hood, if you look a little bit, if you look like a drug dealer, this doctor is going to be less likely to prescribe that medication for you. These physicians are scared to lose their licensing.
Yeah, and that's if you look like a drug dealer by their standards. What looks like a drug dealer to me, when I look across at Lee, you don't look like a drug dealer to me. When I look, but you are. So when you see people, and actually, when you see people, even along, racial lines, when you see people that are Hispanic, you think that whatever you think, your idea, my idea of a drug dealer might be, someone who's white who's thin. But you could have someone who's thin and white that has ulcerative colitis. It's not fair for me to prescribe him narcotics because I think he's a drug dealer. And whereas if I see you, I don't see you as a drug dealer, but that's because of my background. And speaking of background, today is Martin Luther King Day, and
Happy King Day.
Happy King Day, everyone. So it's Martin Luther King Day. We had a nice parade in Los Angeles, and Happy King Day to everyone. And you all know I'm a federal employee. And what are federal employees doing? Are they getting paid or not getting paid?
They are not getting paid.
They're not getting paid.
So you don't get a check. How do you feel about it?
How do I feel about not getting a check? Well, I got to tell you, Lee, has to be honest, I'm getting a check. So I
thought you were.
Yeah, it's not fair.
You're a little too happy to be over here not getting a check, man.
Yeah,
it's getting paid.
Well, I got to tell you. I'm really fortunate to be at the VA, and I've got a really good job. I'm really thankful for that. The people that are not getting paid, though, if you look at the people, the TSA workers,
National Park Service,
Park Service people, if I'm not getting paid and you're asking me to show up, I'm driving for Uber. If I can, and those are the people. They need that money.
What about FBI, CIA, Secret Service?
Well, some of those guys are getting paid, some of them aren't. And the thing, how do you figure out who's getting paid, who's not getting paid? One way to figure it out is very typically they're funded, like the VA, the Veterans Administration. We're funded in October. Okay. So since we're funded in October, we would be getting paid. The same thing with drugs, like we've already bought our drugs. We've already, whereas the TSA, they get funded either monthly. Food stamps. Food stamps typically get funded quarterly. So people that are getting food stamps, they're not getting them. A lot of times the IRS, they're funded either quarterly, and I could be wrong about this, but I'm probably not. But they're funded, quarterly, so their funds run out,
you're not getting paid. If you weren't getting paid, would you be able to work? Would you show up?
No,
You
not
would
at
not
all.
show. TSA,
And
TSA.
you know
though.
what? It's not even about the money. It's more about the principle of the fact that as taxpayers, they make us pay for everything.
Right.
At least give me my check on Friday.
Okay. Okay.
So military is still getting paid.
Military is getting paid. Militaries, they've been funded. You know what's remarkable?
What about Border Patrol?
Some of the Border Patrol people are not getting paid. You know what is remarkable?
But one thing that he is pushing hard for, some of those people
Are not
on the
getting
border
paid.
are not
Yeah.
getting paid.
Yeah.
That's real bonehead stupid.
Yeah, that's really remarkable. One thing that that we did in California, if you remember, in California, we used to have that same issue or problem a few years back, wherein they would not pass a budget, and that's the impediment. That's the impediment here is we have not passed a budget. So if you don't pass a budget, you don't pay your bills. It's almost like you don't put money in the bank. We had the same problem in California a few years back, but you know how it was stopped? You know how it was stopped, Lee? I'll tell you how it was stopped. It was stopped by saying that we passed a law, and the law was that if the budget does not get passed, then the lawmakers do not get paid, and they lose the money eternally. You would never get paid. So you went from every year it was the same problem, and we went through a thing wherein you would have a lottery. Oh, you won the lottery. Oh, but there's no money. We haven't funded our budget, so the lottery people wouldn't get their money, and it still happens from time to time in like Indiana or Illinois. Oh, you won the lottery, but we didn't pass a budget, so we don't get paid. But and we had that problem every year. Do you remember, Manuel? We used to have the problem. Oh my God. We didn't pass a budget. No one's getting paid.
So if the House
Yeah, I
and
do
Senate
recall that.
Yeah.
are affected by that, then this problem wouldn't exist.
I do recall that.
Oh, for sure.
And the president's out.
For sure. If they were to say, but, now people are going to think I am a Trump supporter, but how much money does Trump take as his salary?
He's giving it to.
He takes zero. He takes $0. So I'm not a Trump supporter, but people say, oh, you're a Trump supporter. And my daughter, she heard me say that. She won't even come on my show. My daughter, I'll tell you. But that's how this is my older daughter. Yeah, she hasn't been on the show, but she was in. But all the others have been on. I'm a Trump supporter. She made me drop conservative out of my. I used to say, oh, there's a conservative. Well, I'm just conservative. That's not a bad word, But
No.
maybe it is. Maybe it is. Yeah, it is now. Well, it is now. You're absolutely right. It is now. So that's
be conservative.
But back in the day, back to the 60s, conservatives was meant basically that, you didn't smoke. That's what conservative meant.
Yeah.
But now
right.
it means that
Right.
you're like a Trump supporter or something. And
Yeah, huh?
That's what it means.
that's what it means today.
That's
So that's
something
just
else.
an evolving note. But anyways, so since they made it so that in California that the lawmakers did not get paid, that just nixed that problem. We have, since that particular time, we have never, ever failed to get a budget. Ever. And so a solution to our problem is if you were to pass legislation, whereas our congressmen, none of these guys get paid, I guarantee you'd have a budget. The chances of you getting a budget are zero. And truth be told, that's how we solved our problem in California. And California has never missed a budget since that period, since they changed.
What year was that?
law. I'm gonna guess 2012, maybe 2012, maybe. But Brandon, getting off the subject, how are the edibles doing, Stephen? And edibles?
They're doing well. Edibles are one thing where they're not consuming them every day.
Right.
So you have to kind of find your market. But progressively, yeah, it's getting a lot better. People are more intrigued with the idea of infusing different foods, which is kind of becoming the trend.
Yeah. I've actually had some of your food. Your food is absolutely delicious.
Thank you.
But
Appreciate that.
I don't feel like I think you could really enjoy it. I feel if you had edibles, Manuel?
No, I did. Well, actually, I did a brownie once, and I absolutely got sick.
Yeah, Lee, have you had edibles? People see. I got to tell you.
I haven't had any modern day. But back in the day, like you mentioned brownies.
Yes.
I had some friends, and they used to put the actual weed in the brownie.
Right.
They didn't use a cheesecloth back in the day to get the weed out the brownie. There was actually little chunks in the brownie.
Oh, I see. Well, that's remarkable. That's interesting.
We strain it out nowadays.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you.
Why I got sick.
Brandon, what's the name of your company again?
Sweet Daddy Edibles.
Sweet Daddy Edibles. His food was so good. To be honest with you, and I'm not exaggerating, I felt that it's a shame. Honestly, I felt it's a shame that you can't and you have to enjoy it with infusing it. I just feel like, oh my God, this food is.
That's a good point.
No.
That's a good point. Brandon did a New Year's party for me, and we did a peach cobbler that was infused with marijuana, and it was so good, but everyone was so scared to eat the peach cobbler because it was so strong.
Yeah.
So this weekend, we had a birthday party at my house, and Brandon did a peach cobbler. We told him to hold off on the weed this time. We just wanted people to enjoy the peach cobbler.
Right.
Food is so good.
So good, man. I didn't even get any cobbler this weekend, man. At my party, I didn't get any cobbler. They ate up all the cobbler.
I'm not exaggerating. Brandon's food is so good.
Amazing.
It's so good that my feeling is, man, you know, why put
the weed in there, huh?
Why put weed in there?
Some people want to have that high, that experience.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just want to eat good food. I didn't want to deal with that experience this time. I just wanted a good cobbler.
Right.
But maybe we should have put weed in there. Probably would have lasted a little longer if we would have put some weed in the cobbler.
Yeah.
They would have ate it so fast.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, man, that thing was so strong for New Year's.
Yeah. So how much would you put in there? Like, how do you know how much to put in? And I know we were talking about the 7 grams of butter. Well, we're actually working on a cookbook, which is we're really looking forward to bringing out. And our whole premise is to have butter with 7 grams per stick. And so how do you know how much to put in there?
Well, I measure it. So so ahead of time, I know what the oil has been tested at. Once I get it, it's been tested. Right. So from that point, it's just a matter of using a scale and just measuring it by the gram. And then I can do the calculations, the dosage calculations, which should also be in the book.
Right.
And then from there, you can kind of see how much you want to put in there. You can kind of measure it out, and you'll kind of know. But that's why I like using the concentrates, because it's a lot easier to dose out. You know, marijuana is different because it's a plant. So you never really know exactly what you're getting. You can test it, but even the same type of marijuana.
See, that's intimidating to me. The idea that. So I'm just curious, when you're cooking, do you taste? Because when I cook, when I do anything, I usually will sample it and taste it. And do you do that?
I do, and I have to be careful about doing that. Sure. Very careful about it. But you know, you try to focus on taste and get your recipe together so that you don't have to do that once you're dealing with an infused product. So most of the time, I know what my cake is going to taste like. I know what my cobblers are going to taste like, and then I can kind of dose it.
Now, with the cannabis, will it taste different with cannabis? Like, can you taste the peach cobbler and you can taste the cannabis? I wonder.
If you use the flower, if you use raw cannabis, yeah, you can taste it. I mean, because think about any other plant that you ingest.
Any other herb, yeah.
Yeah, it's got chlorophyll in it. It's got that plant matter, and that's and it gives an aftertaste. You know, you eat broccoli, you eat spinach, whatever it is, it's got a weird kind of aftertaste because of the chlorophyll that's in there. But the good thing is when you make butters or oil, you're sucking the THC out, but you're kind of getting rid of the chlorophyll taste. So if you really make good butter, you won't taste it like that. You can tell that there's marijuana in there, but it doesn't have an unpleasurable taste.
Well, that's interesting. His food is so good. It made me. I mean, I could see where you could have a cult following just of the food. It's so good, right? And I'm telling you. I get a lot of good food. Actually, my wife is a really good cook. You know who else is a really good cook? She's not here with us today, but Carol Lemire. Oh, my God. Carol is an amazing cook. She really is, you know. So I would get just a following just based on that. Now, would I follow you enough to kill someone? Probably not. This is Mondays with Wallace. I'm Wallace. We're here today talking about marijuana, as we always do. We're talking about the 60s marijuana. And do you think, Lee, back in the day, were people cooking with brownies back then? You said you had some brownies with cannabis in it. Is that a new thing, or?
No, I mean, as long as I can remember, people have been trying to.
Is that right?
Put marijuana in baking.
Yeah. Do you know how that started? Do you know how that started?
No.
No, I can tell you.
person who's real high.
Oh, not creative.
I wonder
No.
what it would taste like in some
No,
chocolate.
no. That's not how. No, that's not how. That's not how it happened. That's not happening. You know how it happened. I'll tell you how it happened. What would happen is that you would actually.
How do you know, Doc?
How do I know Doc? There you go. As I know, this is my thing. I know cannabis. That's my thing. But I'll tell you how it happened. Is you would go to you have a favorite park? What's the favorite park here? What's the best park here?
A park. What? Magic
Griffith
Johnson Park, Kenneth Hahn Park.
Oh, great park.
Griffin.
Yeah, Hahn Park. We'll say Griffith Park.
Okay.
You would buy marijuana. What would happen is you'd go buy marijuana, and people would buy marijuana. Manuel, and this is typical to Manuel. Manuel, where would you buy marijuana at?
Well, I was, raised in South Central, and it was usually like, it could just be like right around the corner. It was
Right around the
always
corner.
a friend. It was
Local
always
weed
a
man.
friend that would be the guy.
So what
the weed guy.
So what would happen is you would go to the park or buy from your weed guy, your weed man, and very commonly they wouldn't have a significant quantity of weed. If they saw a person like me and I wanted to buy weed, which I'm not knowledgeable about it, they would, instead of giving you weed, they would break it down and they would mix it with something, and they'd mix it with a food product. And that would usually be, what's some of the food products you can?
But like oregano or something.
Oregano.
Parsley.
So they would take
Parsley.
they take your marijuana and they mix it with oregano, or they'd mix it with all these different food products.
Parsley.
Parsley.
I know one guy. He was using catnip.
Catnip.
Yeah, catnip.
well, I wouldn't want mixed with catnip, but but what you would do is so you'd get
That would make me want to fight that guy if he sold me that, man.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
so you wouldn't
Sold
do
me some catnip.
but you would get the weed and you'd smoke it. You smoke the weed and you think it's not really weed.
You think you're smoking weed and it's not.
You think you're smoking weed and it's not. Your wife walks in, honey, what is that? Brownie mix. Make brownies. So you didn't have weed, but you had something you could cook with. So people would take the byproducts, and since it wasn't really nothing to get them high, they would take and make. I'm telling you, that's what happened. They would take the byproduct or what they had that wasn't real weed, and they would make brownies with what little. I'm telling you, that's how. That's how.
Your mind would.
Well, of course, it wasn't catnip, but it was oregano or
Parsley.
but it was something. I'm telling you, you're wrong.
Parsley.
Parsley.
Basil.
Mint julep in my.
Well, I'm just telling you.
That's how the edibles got started, huh?
Oh,
But that's how it got started. I'm telling you, that's how it got started. People would would buy marijuana. It wouldn't be pure marijuana, but it would be something that would be satisfactory to cook with, and people would.
I think if we go back to the Egyptian ancient writing days, they were eating cannabis back then and healing people with it, and probably even cooking with it.
If you
They
thought
use it for
about
a lot of wounds.
Egypt, all the way back then, yeah, they were using cannabis.
Yeah, they use a lot of cannabis for wounds like cuts. Or if you get cut.
You're absolutely right. If you listen to people today, you would think that cannabis, and this is my feeling. I've always thought this, and obviously I'm wrong. Like I'm wrong about a lot of things. I thought cannabis was a new sensation, but cannabis has been around for
decades.
hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Hundreds of years, really, and maybe 1,000 years, maybe, which is really quite remarkable.
Big time. It's been around for God knows how long, centuries, actually.
Yeah, which is just remarkable to to think about that, and you wonder where we're headed with it. When you see this pure product, I wonder where we would be today had we have had this pure oil, or maybe do you think, Brandon? Do you think they had this pure oil, or even how you make this? Like I'm back to our pen. How you made this pen?
They've had the oil for years.
I'm gonna give this back to you, buddy.
But
They didn't have the technology to vaporize it.
Well, the new technology, as far as the oil goes, is the distillation process.
Mm-hmm.
That has come more with chemistry and technology, and they've been able to do other things with it before they started doing cannabis. And now that's why it's becoming a new standard. But I think if it was, it's a different ball game.
Yeah, certainly a different ballgame.
It's a totally different ball game. But I will say that I know for a fact THC oil has been used for hundreds of years.
THC oil.
Prior to its use, within the last 10, 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm. But my feeling is the distillation process, and people have been using distillates for years.
Yeah.
The distillation process is fairly new.
Yeah, it is.
Because you have this pure product, and I wonder, and it goes back to, back to the Tate, the Manson killings. I wonder if we would still have this deviant culture, which that certainly was a deviant culture, if we had the pure cannabis, if we had pure CHC oil, THC. Yeah. Look at me. THC oil. I'm supposed to know what I'm talking about here. But I have to wonder if we had this pure process, would we have to spike cannabis? And do we have to spike cannabis?
No.
We don't have to spike.
So already
but I know that.
And they're already using chemicals.
Yeah, big time. You took the words right out of my mouth. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are a lot of chemical processing with weed now, and that's one of the major reasons why it's not one of the major reasons, but I don't mess with weed, because it seems like there's too much chemical going on.
Mm-hmm.
With weed. The processing of it, especially when you can, grow plants as almost God knows how big in your
big as Christmas trees
in your closet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you take your distillate and when you take your and you make this, because I believe you make that. I believe, is that right, Brandon?
I don't make the oil.
You don't make the oil?
Yeah. I buy the oil.
You buy the oil,
mm-hmm.
But you have the ability to make it.
Yeah, I probably could.
You probably could.
But the process is a process where if you don't know what you're doing,
it's dangerous.
You kind of want to leave that to the experts.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What are the dangers? Obviously, do you use alcohol? Is it an alcohol process?
It's not necessarily an alcohol process, but
I think it's combustion.
Yeah, you're using heat in different parts of the process.
Yeah,
I've heard of people making oil in the garage and they have explosions.
Yeah,
really.
Police come, big bad stuff.
Level.
Explosions.
And it happens. If you ever listen to the news every few months,
exactly.
You'll hear a story like that where it'll say, where the neighborhood of people said, we never even knew they lived in our neighborhood. And these people have been in there cooking drugs, and then one day they leave.
Crazy explosion.
They leave it unattended or something like that, and it goes up in smoke, man. And then obviously you're going to know because the solvents are still there.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing what abundant conversation we have every week. These guys are real knowledgeable. This is Mondays with Wallace. I'm Wallace. We talk to you every week about cannabis. And next Mondays, we're going to talk about narcotics, marijuana, and the ability to get marijuana relative to the ability to get narcotics. That'll be just a fantastic show. We were hoping to have ex-Ram Rosie Greer. I don't know if you all know Rosie Greer, but Rosie said, do you know Rosie Greer, Manuel? Have you know who that is?
I know of him, but I don't know him personally. No.
Yeah, he's a personal friend of the show, and
wow, he's still alive, huh?
Yeah, he's more than just alive. Rosie's coming out with a book. And Rosie still does a lot. Rosie used to have a podcast. He had actually Rosie had run for governor the last time, although he had withdrawn his nomination. But this is Mondays with Wallace. I'm Wallace. Today we were talking about marijuana, the Charles Manson, the LaBianca Tate murders, the marijuana in the 60s, marijuana in 2018. We're going to say goodnight to you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
Good seeing you guys. We'll see you next week, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Okay.
Bye.